like talking about ChatGPT, I definitely recommend against ChatGPT. If you get caught using that, you're banned from that specific university.
So you surround yourself by the top five talented people around you, and you become the average of them. So the chances of you becoming more talented is considered to be higher in US. Now you got so many research opportunities in your 11th 12th grade. Can you share, was that nepotism, or you actually went ahead, networked with all those individuals?
See, nepotism, I don't think so works. I don't think that nepotism really works, especially in terms of opportunities that are available in North America. And another thing is, if you're reaching out to a person who's just 1 year senior to you, or just one level above in seniority, their experiences, their advice would be much more relevant to you than what Elon Musk would suggest to you.
So hello everyone, today we have Rumman here. He got into US, UK, Canada universities with scholarship as well, and he has chosen finally University of British Columbia, where he got 100% scholarship. So hi Rumman, can you please introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's an amazing opportunity for me to discuss and talk about my insights over the course of 4 years that I've been involved in study abroad. The overall process. Hi, my name is Ruman Habib. I am an incoming freshman at the University of British Columbia and the recipient of the Karen McKellen International Leader of Tomorrow Award, which is a full ride scholarship program. I am one of only 3 Indians to have received this award this specific year. Apart from that, I have been fortunate enough to receive almost $1 million in scholarships to US and Canada, with some of them being the dual degree program at Duke University and Duke Kunshan with 75% scholarship, all three campuses of the University of Toronto with 100K and 50K scholarships, among others. So it's an amazing, opportunity for me to speak to you as well. Thank you so much for having me, and I'm looking forward to our conversation for the next half an hour.
Absolutely. So $1 million scholarship, it's extremely rare. एक student को hardly, they get one or two universities fully funded. So what is the secret? Can you share? Had you ever expected कि एक million भी मिल सकता है?
I mean, honestly, I did not expect that I would be able to get, scholarships worth $1 million. That in itself, it's still hard for me to digest. I'll be very honest with you. Sometimes I sleep at night and I think, do I am I really living this? It's God's grace. God has been very kind to me. That's why I was able to get these amazing scholarships and get into the universities that I did get into. But coming on to the fact how I think I was able to get into these universities, primarily I think it's because of my profile that I had developed over the past 4 years. Now, what universities look for in terms of your profile is basically commitment, consistency, and being very in depth and thorough in whatever activity that you're a part of. It doesn't matter if you're doing music, if you're doing cooking, if you're doing podcasting, for example, which is what I did. That doesn't matter. But what matters exactly is going very deep into what you're doing and being at least one of the best people in that specific industry. Of course, you're a kid, so nobody expects you to be world class, but at the same time, you have to distinguish yourself among other people. So talking about the kind of profile that I had a startup called the Grow Project, where over the course of 3 years we reached almost 500,000 people. And we had 200 interns working with us, some people from Dubai, from Canada, from the US, a lot of people from India as well. And in this startup, we basically had, like I said, we had a podcast, we had a blog. It was a media content creation company. I like to call it a company. It's a startup, but that's something that I had. So over the course of 3 years, we were able to grow it to a very big level. And I interviewed some very eminent people, such as the Lieutenant General Rajesh Pant, who's the head of cybersecurity of India. Apart from that, I also interviewed the career coach at Harvard Business School, an award-winning author from UK, an actor, among other people. Apart from that, I was also heavily involved in research as well. I had 4 research internships throughout, and that the research internships that I did all of them were in grade 12. So it was a very hectic time for me, but like I said, it's something that was ended up proving to be very useful. So I got a full research internship, fully funded research internship at the University of California, Santa Cruz. So that's something that I was involved in as well. I was the vice head boy of my college. I had a couple of other activities as well, but these were the main things which I think distinguished me from other applicants who had applied to the same programs and the same universities.
Incredible. So, can you share what are the three global events or books that have influenced you in becoming who you are today, or whether it is having the best application, whether it is becoming a scholar? So, can you define?
Absolutely. So I have looked up to people such as Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, Bill Gates for the longest time ever. I remember I was, in grade one, and I used to talk to my dad that, I want to be like Bill Gates. I want to, be like him. I wouldn't say books, rather the autobiography of these specific individuals which has influenced me the most. Like Mark Zuckerberg, talking about him, for example. So I watched this movie called The Social Network, and it's based off of a book as well. So I watched this movie, and I remember I was watching it, and I was so fascinated with the opportunities available at Harvard, and which is why he was able to scale the Facebook from being just a college pet startup to a multi-billion-dollar startup that it is. In fact, now even bigger. So having watched such a movie, and having read autobiographies of Steve Jobs, of Elon Musk, so these kind of books really inspired me to aim and aspire to be a world class individual, a world class leader. So I think these individuals, these books, and the content that I consumed about these individuals is what motivated me, first of all, to aspire to be the best in whatever capacity I could be, and then secondly, to pursue education in North America, which is why I ended up applying abroad in the first place.
Now, an argument for you, you're going to Canada. Canada may, like, there is so many problems going on. First problem is that people, in like STEM fields, they complain कि वहाँ पे average talent है. The talent going to US is very talented. So you surround yourself by the top five talented people around you, and you become the average of them. So the chances of you becoming more talented is considered to be higher in US. So what would you say to that?
Okay, first of all, I don't believe this to be true. I don't believe that there is average talent in Canada compared to that of US. I have seen firsthand so many young achievers who have chosen the Canadian education system over the US for a variety of reasons, which I'll go over later in the conversation. But I have personally seen so many amazing people, so many talented people choose Canada over the US. That's the first thing. So I don't see it, in this sort of light. Secondly, my overall philosophy and the goal that I have, like I said earlier as well, is to be the best in whatever I am doing. So it doesn't matter whether I am in the US or whether I am in Canada. I want to be the best at whatever I am doing. I want to be a world class individual. So that's the kind of aspiration and the goal that I have for myself. So whether I am in the US or Canada, that really doesn't matter. But just for the sake of the argument, let's say the talent in Canada is slightly lesser compared to that in US. It's easier for me. It's better for me in the first place because I'm at an advantage, because of the kind of goals, like I said, that I have for myself. So it's an advantage for me anyway. So I don't believe it to be true, but for the sake of the argument, if it was, it's easier for me. It's better for me to be the best.
Well, very well said. And you also got into University of Toronto. So now, if you were already sure you're deciding, Canada over US and UK, and you got the most amount of scholarships in Canada, you got also a University of Toronto too, right?
Absolutely.
How much was it?
So I got 100K and 50K scholarships at all the three campuses of. I got into all three campuses and 100K and 50K scholarships. So the reason why I chose UBC over U of T, first of all, was because UBC offered me a full ride scholarship. So my entire tuition, accommodation, travel expenses, everything is being paid for by UBC. So I don't have to worry about my expenses, the cost of education, and I can study in the most efficient manner, and I can give back to UBC as well, because UBC has been so generous. So in whatever capacity I can contribute to their community. So that's the first thing. I don't have to worry about my finances. I've been very lucky. Second reason was the kind of, and this is very personal, and this is like a personal bias that I have toward UBC. I have friends at UBC, I have friends at U of T, and I know so many people who are much more happier at UBC because they believe that the environment at UBC, it's a more fertile ground for you to be studying in a better environment, and for you to have your specific startups, your own your own specific company, or whatever project that you want to do. What I have seen, the resources available at UBC far surpass what the resources resources are at U of T. Of course, the rankings sometimes, sometimes U of T is at number one, whereas sometimes UBC is at number one. So those rankings do end up changing. But ultimately, what matters is when a person wants to go to their college, it's 4 years of their life that they're investing. So it has to be something that they really, really like and they really, gravitate towards. That's the first thing. Second thing, you also have to look at the facilities available and not just the ranking, because the rankings, especially when it's number one, number two, right? It really doesn't matter, at least in my opinion, it really doesn't. So it depends on individual to individual, but that was the reason that I chose UBC over U of T.
But you wanted to get into the startup world. It is known that Toronto is much bigger in terms of startups. Most of the startups that have been funded in Canada, more than 20% have been in Toronto, and Waterloo included.
Absolutely. That's actually very true. And then the argument would be, then there are so many the facilities available, then in cities such as New York and Boston are far surpass what is available in Toronto, right? But then again, like I said, I will be spending 4 years of my life in this specific university. So being in a very conducive environment where I can surround myself with professors and with alumni who are able to support you in these specific startups and the specific projects that you're doing, I think that is much more important, because you will see startups being successful whether they're from a very remote place. It could be a third world country or a first world country. What really matters is that you are in an environment where you're able to produce the best results and solve problems at a global scale. That is what makes a startup successful in the first place. I was able to work on my startup in a virtual format in Lucknow, and Lucknow is a big city, but not, of course, not as big as Bangalore or Pune or Mumbai or Delhi, right? So what really matters is being in an environment where it's conducive and where you are able to thrive. That's I think is what the most important thing is.
Very well said. Now let's move on to your qualifications that helped you nail it in your admission process and make it to UK, US, and Canada. So first of all, can you describe, you were from CBSE board, right?
I was from the ISC board.
ISC. Okay. So ISC is still at an advantage over CBSE to get into abroad or not? What would you say?
This is a very interesting question, because I had this at one point of time, but it never really bothered me, because from the personal experiences that I have had and from my research, what I've been able to understand is that you have to be the best. Coming back to what I was saying anyway, you have to be the best in whatever you're doing. So if you are in a class of 600 people, that's your graduating class. You have to be the best, right? You have to be in the top 10 percentile of that graduating class. So it doesn't matter whether you're from IB or from a state board as well. If you are scoring better than most people, then you will be considered a competitive applicant anyway. Doesn't matter if you're from an IB board or from an ISC board, CBSE board, right? What truly matters is scoring better than your peers, and being a competitive applicant and being a competitive student. That's the first thing. Second thing, of course, there are numerous benefits to doing an IB curriculum or the AP curriculum as well, for that matter. Because it's much more recognized by the US colleges and by the Canadian colleges, so it's easier for them to gauge your performance. But at the same time, if you can't do IB, you can't change it, right? So might as well make the most of your time. I have seen personally so many people who did state board, who did ISC board, who did CBSE board, and they got into some of the best universities in the world, and the people who did IB did not. So it really depends on being a very competitive student rather than the board that you're studying in.
At the same time, do you think AP exams, which are very expensive in India, a CBSE board student cannot afford easily AP exams, AP courses? Do you think it's still worth it? Because in my undergrad, before my undergrad, as an 18-year-old, I took, so I took 4 AP, it helped me a lot. So would you say, since you were applying to US, UK, Canada, if a student would have been taking AP exams to cover some college courses in India, would they be helpful?
See, if you can afford it, then definitely there is no sort of disadvantage to doing an AP examination. Firstly, like I said, because the US colleges, it's their curriculum, so they are able to gauge your score easily. If you score a 5 in Calc BC, that goes on to show how proficient you are at calculus and in mathematics, right? Compared to scoring a 95 in ISC. Of course, they do understand how difficult and how rigorous the ISC board is, but then again, it's a little easier for them to gauge your a performance anyway. But if you cannot afford it, then it doesn't make or break your application. It definitely complements your application if you can give these specific exams, whether it's an AP exam, or like, now that SAT is mandatory, so you have to give it anyway. But it doesn't make or break your application. What matters is being a competitive student in your high school. That is the primary thing which I believe. Your score from grade 9 to grade 12, that is the most important. And then these are the cherry on cake, AP exams, or any such external examination that you end up giving.
Okay, so let's talk about now CDS scores. So in terms of CDS scores, like if we look into any US university, like you applied to Duke, right? So how did you pay attention to CDS scores of Duke? I mean, oh yes, common data set 2023 Duke. Okay, so now here it is. Let's look into this one for Duke, let's say. So you got pretty good scholarship in Duke. So how do you figure out what to prioritize when you look at these scores?
Okay, so how I approached the CDS documents in the first place was to basically understand what a specific university is looking for. For example, a university such as the University of Chicago would have different institutional priorities compared to that of Duke University, and vice versa, right? So what I did is I looked at what these universities prioritize. One university could prioritize essays much more than the other university. For example, like I was talking about University of Chicago, it prioritizes its essays much more than the schools. In fact, even to mention, Duke University, it prioritizes its essay much more than Duke. So through the CDS report, I was able to understand what the institutional priorities are of a specific universities, and how I could tailor my specific application to that university in the best possible manner. Because how you become successful, how you apply successfully to any university, is that you have to tailor your application in a very niche manner to that specific university. Because everyone knows you can apply to 20 colleges through Common App. You can apply to even 10 more, 20 more through a coalition as well. So why would a university accept you over anyone else? Because you will be applying to 19 more universities as well. Why would they choose you? Because you tailor your application, because you show how much effort you're putting into that specific university, right? And while, let's say, even if you do get accepted to 10 out of the 20 universities that you apply for, you'll have to turn down 9 universities, right? So it's a disadvantage for them, because you are turning that university down. So they also have specific scores, the yield rates basically, which is why, like U Chicago has been in a lot of controversy because of these yield scores as well. So
what are yield scores? Can you define?
Yeah, basically a yield percentage is how many people end up getting accepted into that university, compared to how many people end up enrolling into that specific university. So if a university accepts 10,000 people and only 2,000 people end up enrolling, so that means the university is not very good, which is why so many people turn it down, right? So universities also, so that's why if you are a very competitive applicant who can get easily into MIT, and you apply to a university, I won't name any specific university, but if you apply to a university with a 90% acceptance rate, there are chances that you might end up getting rejected from this university as well, because they want to protect their yield percentage as well. So which is why you have to essentially tailor your application. Coming back to my point, which is why you have to essentially tailor your application to all universities that you're applying for. It's quality of the application compared to the over the quantity of the application that you submit.
Yield is a controversial topic. मतलब ऐसा क्यों होता है? Why 10,000 people apply and they get in, and only 2,000 go to University of Chicago? What is the reason? Do you know the controversy behind it?
I was the specific numbers aren't for University of Chicago. These are very hypothetical. So let me just clarify. I was just talking about I was just taking random numbers, but basically, talking about U Chicago, if it sees that you are a very competitive applicant, sometimes it turns you down, because it realizes that you might get into a university such as MIT, and you might end up going there instead of U Chicago, which is why and to basically what universities do is they prioritize their ED applications, their early decision applications, much more than regular applications. Why? Because if you get into ED, you are bound to study there, so their yield rate basically goes down. That's how the yield thing basically works.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. That's why ED has an advantage. But since you were applying to different countries, you didn't do any ED application, I believe, right?
You can do an ED if you're applying to US. You if you're applying to Canada, if you're applying to the UK, you can definitely do an early decision application to US, but you can't apply to two schools in the US early decision. Early decision is only binding for US. That's it.
One. Okay, so you can apply to rest of the world, and you can deny the US ED and go to
Yep.
Canada just like you were going. So
Yeah,
now,
yeah, yeah. Of course.
awesome. So let's study your application. So can you share your scores 9 to 12? And how do you think, what were the three reasons in your profile that you think that helped you get in?
Okay, absolutely. So, in terms of how universities in the US and Canada look at your scores, the overall application is very holistic. So, there is not one aspect which makes or breaks your application, and the grades being one of them. So, it doesn't make or break your application, but it's definitely one of the most important aspect of anyone's application. What universities look for is consistency and improvement. In simple words, an upward graph of your academic performance, right? That's what they basically look for. So there's a myth that in order for you to get into top universities and bag good scholarships, you need to be a 99 percenter. That's definitely not true. I never scored a 99% in my boards. That's a myth. I was never an all India ranker, but at the same time, I definitely maintain a decent score, a respectable score throughout my grade 9, 11, 12, 19, 11, 12. Which is, I think, what they look for. That, like I said, consistency. You don't have to be a 99 percenter. If you are, then again, more power to you. That's an amazing thing. But if you do not have, a score such as 99%, you don't have to be disappointed. You can make up for those scores by, having an application which is so stunning, which is just so niche to that specific university, that they can't turn you down. You have to be so good that they can't turn you down. They don't pick and choose compared to 99%. Okay, this person got a 99%, this person got a 98%, but I'm not going to choose 98% because he has 1% less. That's not how it works.
Yeah, but like जितने भी students को मैंने देखा है, like all the students who've gone to Canada, they have above 95% at least. Like there's a strong cutoff in terms of, your 12th, 11th performance. Don't you agree?
Absolutely. You have like I said, you have to score decently. What I'm saying is, it's not end or be all your scores, but you definitely have to score. What I'd say is above 90% is what you should aim for. Below 90% is a little gray area. But I have seen people, like I said, I know personally so many people who are going with me, who do not have a 95%, but they had a very good application as well, which is why they got in. I had science till my grade 10. I had then commerce in my grade 12, and I ended up scoring an 89% in my grade 12 ISC exams. But like I said, my scores were decent, they were respectable, but the overall application that I had, I think, which was which separated me and which distinguished me from everyone else, which is why I think I was lucky enough to be awarded this scholarship.
Very well said. That's amazing. But can you share, like 89% is extremely rare. Like what was the edge you had? Because Canada में माना जाता है कि like if you don't have extracurriculars, that's okay. They care mainly about scores. So is that true? Like they don't care much about extracurriculars. So can you share what are the cherry on top you added?
Okay. Basically, see, any university that you apply to, whether it's Canada, US, UK, whatever it could be, the first thing that they look at are your scores, right? Without that, nobody, like your extracurriculars aren't even looked at before your scores are. So for you to be, at least held competitive in any capacity, you have to score, decently. At the same time, how you get in the pile, right, if you have a decent score. But how you distinguish yourself for you to be accepted to that specific university, right, that is where extracurriculars come in. Like the name says, it's an extra curricular, so it's definitely not the most important thing, but it sets you apart from everyone else who's applying, who has the same score as you. Let's say there are two people who have a 95%. Who do you choose? The person who has a better profile, the person who has a better essay. So I think I was able to articulate my thoughts, my values, and the overall kind of a person that I am through my essays as well, in a in a good manner, I think. I like to think. And then at the same time, I also had a good overall profile as well. Like I said, I had a fully funded research internship at UC Santa Cruz. I had a research internship at Sri Ram College of Commerce, Delhi University. I wrote a research paper independently as well. Apart from that, I had a startup which reached over 500k people. I had another startup which was a tech-based company, digital services agency, where we offered services such as web development, SEO management, digital marketing, and we had 10 more than 10 clients within the first month itself. Apart from that, I was also involved in a lot of school related activities. I was the vice head boy of my college. I was the president of a couple of societies in my college. I was the editor in chief of the magazine of the magazine as well. I had a fitness page as well. So I had lots of things that showed the kind of person I am apart from academics. So if you do not have the best scores, if you haven't scored 99% in your 10th and your 12th, it's not game over for you. You have to make it up in some way or the other, which then leaves it to be the essays and the extracurriculars.
Totally. So now let's talk about your application timeline. Can you share your entire schedule from 11th onwards that helped you plan the application, plus the timeline? So 12th May, you applied on this date, you got the acceptance on this date, you got your predicted scores submitted by this date, and you got your 12th grade final result, which helps you in conditional acceptance. Your pura timeline, can you share date by date?
Okay, surely. I think I didn't manage the timeline pretty well. While I go into my answer, you'll understand why. In my grade 11, I focused much more on working on my application in terms of my extracurriculars. So that was doing separate internships, working on my projects, working on my startups, working on the podcast that I had. And when I came into grade 12, in March, my grade 11 final exams ended. So I had my AP exams, which I had to give in May. So I had only 1 month to prepare, which again, like I said, it wasn't the best thing in the world, because I only had a month to prepare for the timeline that people usually prepare for 6 months, 8 months, or sometimes even in year as well. So that was that. Then after I had completed my AP exams in May, I went on to give my IELTS in August, and then I had my midterms in September. These were the examinations. In terms of my overall profile, how I proceeded with that, I started working on my essays around the month of May. After my AP exams had ended, I couldn't think of anything to write for my common app, because everything is so common nowadays. Talking about public speaking, talking about stage phobia, talking about your startup one failing, doing this and that. So I wasn't able to think of a niche essay to write on. So what I did instead was work on my YX college or YX university essays for the time being, so that at least I have some progress that I'm making. And because the essays that are required for a specific universities, let's say why Duke, right? Why Duke Kunshan? So that requires a lot of research. You have to go onto the website of the specific university, find out what their institutional priorities are, how you can serve those, what the kind of previous experiences that you have had in terms of your research, in terms of your projects, right? And how you can contribute that to the university that you're applying for. Right. So that's how you write your YX university essays. Then there are also specific essays, those are called, community essays. For example, what community do you, where do you basically come from, how do you represent your community? What specific thing do you bring out? So being from Lucknow, being a Lucknow boy, I wanted to show the tehzeeb of Lucknow, and, the culture of Pehle Aap in my essay. So that is what I wrote about. That is what I talked about in my community essays as well. So while towards the end of August, I was completing almost all my Y specific universities essays, when Common App opened in August. And during this specific period of time, I started working on my activity descriptions and my Common App essay. Activity descriptions are so important. People don't prioritize it enough. I put in so much of brain juice into thinking how I could best present my case and best present my activities, because the kind of activities that I had, they were pretty to be very frank, they were pretty jumbled up. I had three groups, three startups. All of them were very similar sounding, had very similar things that I was doing. So it was very difficult for me to distinguish each thing from the other thing, and how to justify everything. 150 characters is not a lot. You can't talk about everything in the world, so you have to ensure that you're dedicating enough time to these activity descriptions, and you're utilizing that in the these 150 characters in the best possible manner to present your activity in the so that the the person who's reading your application, they can see what the story behind what you're doing is. Now comes the common app essay, which I started writing around the month of August. I wrote about my school uniform. The color of my school uniform is khaki, and it's something which I did not like as a child, because most of the school's uniform that you look at, you wear a white shirt, you wear black trousers, something like that. So that is what we are accustomed to seeing. So wearing a uniform which is khaki, you don't really like that. But while I was coming towards the end of my high school, I fell in love with the khaki, and it had seen me grow from a person who was so shy, so scared to speak, from a person who was the vice head boy and led the entire college, the entire school into daily prayers, right? So I personified my khaki into like a living person which had seen me grow, and it was like I wrote about how it was a part of my identity, something which I did not like earlier, but then it became something which was so important to me towards the end of my grade 12, and which had seen me grow from a person who was so scared and then a person who was so confident and so outspoken. So through the essay, I was able to show my growth through the khaki, because I did not have one specific instance where you end up realizing, okay, this is my entire life has changed now. Most of us, the most of the essays that you'll read, they'll usually be about one specific event that led to that person's epiphany. But I did not have a case like that. My entire life has been a case of epiphany. So how do I articulate that? So that's why I had to find a unique way to present my sort of case to the university, so they see, okay, how does this tie Rumman's case, how does this tie Rumman's application all together? Okay, he has good extracurriculars, he has decent grades, he has decent letters of recommendation. How does it tie together, and what can Rumman contribute? So that was the entire goal of the essays which I wrote.
Now, can you so you mentioned everything till September. Now let's move on to after September. When did you get your acceptance letter? And you submitted your predicted score for 12th around then too, right? So let's talk about
that. You get your predicted scores after you have completed your 12th midterms, right? So I had my midterms completed in September, and I got my predicted scores around that time. I gathered all the documents that were required, and I submitted my early decision application and early action applications as well. I think around first of November. When I think 1st of November is the deadline, right? Forgive me, it's in 8 months that I've submitted my application. So around that period of time, I had submitted my application. There were 2 months that I had to follow up. If there was something else that I was doing, if there was an update to my application, I was in constant communication with the universities as well. That this is what I'm doing. This is how, like, if there's something else that you need from me, please let me know. So I was in constant communication with the universities. I heard back in December. Apart from that, I applied regular decision as well to a lot of universities. So I was preparing my application for that as well. I realized there were some aspects missing in terms of my essays. There were things that could have been improved on, that could have been worked upon as well. So I started working on those during the month of November. Also, I had so much stress to, because I had to prepare for my board exams as well. I had, so many internships to focus on. I had so many applications to write. And because I was applying to US, UK, Canada, there were like so many things that I had to juggle with. So it was, a very stressful period of my life, the entire grade 12. But then again, I think it's very fulfilling once you get your decision. So I heard back from all the universities around 1st of April. I think that's when all of them had replied. And that's when I ended up also getting the offer for UBC full ride, and I ended up choosing. It was a no-brainer for me, choosing UBC over any other college. So that's how my timeline looked like.
Was there a conditional acceptance with like?
Absolutely, the conditional acceptance. So in terms of what universities look for, they take your grade 9, 10, 11, 12, 12 half value scores, and then for US they do not mention, like they do not explicitly mention that this is the kind of conditional acceptance that you have, but at the same time it's expected that you maintain the kind of scores that you have. So if if you had submitted an average of 95% through your grade 9, 10, 11, 12, a 93 and 90, even in fact a 90% is also fine, because they also do realize, because there are so many things that you've had to juggle with. A little dip is fine in your acceptance, in your conditional acceptance. In terms of US, Canadian schools, and in fact UK schools as well, they are a little more strict when it comes to conditional acceptances. They do mention a strict cutoff. Let's say it could be 85%, right? For let's say it was, I think, 85% for King's College London in UK, and similar for UBC as well.
So you got 85% like conditional acceptance for
Conditional. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Got it. Okay, that was the timeline. So now, important question: हर student को ना कुछ shortcuts पता होते हैं in application. Can you share what shortcuts you took that other students don't know? For example, I learned about common data set we talked about, which is kind of a shortcut. Other shortcut is some people use Chat GPT in a cool way. They just put their activity names and it get the description, and they put that as it is. You worked really hard in presenting your activity section, extracurriculars. So, what shortcuts you took that helped you boosting or saving time?
Okay. See, there weren't any, I don't believe that there are any shortcuts per se to success. There's always difficult things that you have to overcome, but you can make those difficulties easier through certain, things that certain facilities that you have. For like talking about ChatGPT, I definitely recommend against ChatGPT. If you get caught using that, you're banned from that specific university, so it's not worth risking. You can ask ChatGPT for feedback on your essays if you want, but then again, it's not very constructive. You can try to improve the structure of your essay or the grammar of your essay, but you have Grammarly for that, so it's better to avoid having any sort of ChatGPT. I was so scared. I'd entered my essay into ChatGPT once, and then when I checked through the ChatGPT, whatever the bots are, I had only asked it to correct the grammar, and the entire thing was shown as written by AI. So I had to redo the entire thing. I did not submit anything which closely resembled anything related to AI, and maybe it was because I was a little too conscious. Maybe you don't have to be so conscious, but that's what I would recommend. There's no point, honestly. They want to see you as a person, your personality, your writing ability is not Chat GPT. Anybody can Chat GPT, right? So that's what I would say about Chat GPT. Coming to the sort of shortcuts that you can take, the one thing that you should definitely do, and you could call this a shortcut as well, is network with people who are already at the university that you want to. I was lucky enough that I had friends who were studying at this specific university, or the specific universities that I was applying to, and the universities that I applied which I did not have a friend, I contacted them through LinkedIn, through Instagram, and through whatever platform that I basically could. I think I spoke to 200, 300 people, talking about their experiences, and how they applied to that university, what worked for them, what did not work for them, what activity had worked for them, what kind of essays worked for them, what to avoid in essays for a specific university. So let's say if you're applying to Cornell University, for example, reach out to somebody who's at Cornell. Request them if they can show you their essay. Very good. If they can't, they can give you pointers on your specific essay as well, and you get a very tailored advice and a very tailored feedback from a person who has already achieved what you want to achieve, right? So that's one thing that's one sort of shortcut I'd say you should definitely look out for. It's in fact, it's not even a shortcut, it's a very essential life skill, learning how to network with people, right? So that's how I think I have been able to do these things. I spoke to so many people, trust me. I was lucky enough that I had good friends as well. One of the friends you have also interviewed, Ariba, who helped me with my UBC application. Apart from that, I had people from Cornell University, from University of Chicago, so many places. I was also lucky that I had a very supportive career counselor, the guidance counselor at my school as well, who was able to review my essays and then give me tailored advice for that. So these are the things that these relationships can only be formed if you know how to network and if you know how to cultivate these relationships, right? So I think that's one that's the if a person is who's watching this can take away only one thing, this would be it. Network, speak to people as many as you possibly can.
And I totally agree because you have to network with people who are one step above you. आप सीधा CEO Sam Altman को reach out नहीं कर सकते कि I want to be a Y Combinator, give me a research internship. You have to only start with one step above. I reach out to, if I'm a mid-level engineer, I reach out to senior engineers, I get a reply easily. But if I reach out to straight CEO, I may not. So I think reaching out to maybe a second year student, first year student is more important than just straight a final year student.
Absolutely. And another thing is, if you're reaching out to a person who's just 1 year senior to you, or just one level above in seniority, their experiences, their advice would be much more relevant to you than what Elon Musk would suggest you, because the kind of problems that he would be facing, or the kind of problem that he faced won't be relevant to you. But a person who applied to universities just last year, their advice would be much more useful to you.
True. Now, what are you looking forward to your first and second year at UBC? What are your plans?
Um, Absolutely. So I'm looking forward to network with people. Like I said, this is something that I really enjoy. The main reason why I wanted to study abroad in the first place was because of these networking opportunities that are available. Like I said, I saw the social network and I was enamored by the facilities and the networking opportunities available. Right, when you have the tag of a of a prestigious university such as University of British Columbia, or any good university for that matter, and you're an international scholar, so people are much more likely to reply to you as well. So earlier I did not have any credibility. Now I do have some credibility, and when I am working on some ventures and when that venture becomes successful, I'll have even more credibility. So it's just it's sort of like a ladder that you have to climb to get to networking with the CEO in the first place. So I'm looking forward to network with the people who are like-minded to me. I'm looking forward to network with professors, with seniors, and with industry leaders as well, because most of the universities that people would be applying to, the aspirational universities, they offer so many amazing facilities in terms of reaching out to alumni. The alumni are very supportive, so if you have a startup, they're willing to invest in your startup, right? So that's one thing that I'm very excited about.
Wonderful. Since you applied to UK as well, can you talk about, like, UK is so closer to India. Scholarship opportunities are obviously limited in UK. So what do you think about UK after applying? Like, UK is struggling in terms of economy. Any advice for students applying to UK?
What I'd say is, see, UK offers an amazing education experience as well. And for a very long time, when I was in grade six or seventh, I was aspiring to go to the UK, because I had heard of Oxford, Cambridge, and London School of Economics, King's College London. So these colleges sound so fancy, honestly. So I wanted to go to UK, but then again, the reason why I chose Canada or North America in general was because the startup culture is a little better compared to that of UK, but the education system and the rigor that you would get, especially for STEM related, disciplines in UK, it's amazing. So if you're applying, what you need primarily is good grades and a good SOP. That's it. If you have decent extracurriculars, you'll be able to get into most of the top universities that you apply, except for maybe London School of Economics. It places an equal emphasis on grades as well. So they won't even look at your application if it's below 95%, right? If your even if your application is very good, if your scores are very good, your application isn't that good, so they'll reject you anyway. So you have to be a little careful in terms of where you're applying. But if you have good grades, if that's what you're aspiring to do, and if you want to get done with your bachelor's in a faster period of time, it's just 3 years for UK. So it offers an opportunity, and you can get your bachelor's done in 3 years, go to North America if you want to for your master's in the fourth year, while your friend is still in his fourth year, right? So there are, of course, benefits to both. It depends on person to person, the kind of financial viability that is offered. But the ending thing that I would say in terms of this thing is, choose something which you resonate with, which you would be happy with, right? If you aren't very happy at Harvard, let's say, then there's no point, because of course you do get the facilities, but if your mental health isn't doing well, if you are struggling, you aren't happy, you won't be able to perform in the most optimal manner, right? It's better to study in a university which isn't as prestigious as Harvard, if you're able to make the most out of it. It's what you make out of the university is what matters the most, compared to the name of the university in itself.
Very well said. Now, now you got so many research opportunities in your 11th, 12th grade. Can you share, was that nepotism, or or you actually went ahead, networked with all those individuals?
See, nepotism, I don't think so works. I don't think that nepotism really works, especially in terms of opportunities that are available in North America and UK. The reason is because you have to go out on your own and you have to apply for these internships. You have to find out what internships are available, right? Um, Plus at the same time, although I did have seniors, and I had lots of people that I knew, it was because of the fact that I had networked with them anyway. So I wouldn't call it nepotism, because I had to network with them individually. So if you want to get to know about these opportunities in the first place, you have to be networking with people, as many people as you possibly can, people who are studying at the university that you want to. Like I said earlier as well, you have to contact people who have achieved already what you want to achieve, right? Like I'm speaking to you, the reason why I'm speaking to you is because I also want to be a successful podcaster, a successful interviewer as well. So I'm getting to learn from this conversation lots of things which I wouldn't have been able to otherwise. So, and just like this conversation, I had conversations with a lot of people. I spoke to them what kind of internships that they did. So I found similar internships, and I applied to those. I reached out to professors as well if it was a very specific niche internship that I was interested in. So the specific program that I did at UC Santa Cruz, it's called Science Internship Program, and I found out, like I said, through networking. My friend told me, and because of this, I reached out to the professors as well. I created a profile which was enticing for the professor. Why would they give you a full merit scholarship to research? It costs around, I think, $3,000 or $5,000 US dollars to get this research internship. It's pretty expensive. How do you get that? You have to present yourself in the best possible manner. You can only do that if you network. So ultimately, all my advices boil down to this: you have to network with people. That's the only way that you can get to be aware of the opportunities. Like the research that I did at Shriram College of Commerce, I got to know because I was research because I was because I had a network who was involved in research at Shriram College of Commerce, or doing research separately, independently as well. So I think that's how people should approach research. It's definitely something which is very new, in term I mean, it's not new, but new as an activity for high schoolers to be a part of.
Yes.
It's very exciting. I never thought that I was the person who would be interested in research. It sounded boring to me, honestly. But then, I first of all, I selected topics which I was very interested in, like the research that I did at UC Santa Cruz. It was on the tech layoffs, and the problems and the struggles of H-1B visa holders, especially the Indian immigrants. So it was something which I was so interested in learning about. So I did not feel like it was a internship per se. I was getting to learn about a very interesting topic, and the benefit was I got to complete this internship under an esteemed professor. So I think that's how people should approach internships.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Roman. It was very nice talking to you. I hope it adds a lot of value to all the students, high schoolers watching, and who want to get, $1 million in scholarships as well. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure speaking with you. And before we end this podcast, I remember I used to watch your videos when I was in grade eight. The videos that you had posted 4 years ago, 100% scholarship playlist. I used to watch all these videos. So it's a great feeling, honestly, to be on the other side of the podcast this time. And hopefully through the conversation that we have had and that we've shared, the insights that we have discussed, it should be able to help people get some sort of scholarships that they want to ease their financial burden. And thank you so much again for having me on your podcast. It was amazing talking to you. You're doing an awesome job. You're doing an amazing work. And I wish you the best of luck for all the more interviews that you have coming as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you again.